So I'm Mike. I'm going to be talking about our routes into development, so ways that you guys can kind of get into a web development area. Before I start, has anyone got, I think we kind of covered this, but has anyone got any experience with development with HTML or CSS or JavaScript? Hands up, anyone? Okay, a couple. Okay, that's fine. So hopefully you guys will kind of get what I'm talking about. Hopefully it's not too crazy for the rest of you. So to start, who am I? So I'm Mike Steer. I am a geek. I always have been, and I probably always will be. Apologise for all the Star Wars references in this slide, but it's kind of a bit of who I am. My technical term is I am the head of technical at Reflect Digital, as they've said. I was the head of dev. I do more of a technical overview of everything at Reflect, so I kind of moved into a head of technical role. But I basically manage a team of 4 developers, 2 front end and 2 back end, and I'll get into that a little later. But we deal with everything kind of development for Reflect Digital. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got into development, the pitfalls, my kind of strange route in, and hopefully can give you some advice on best practices and things that you can look out for when you start to get in there. So the early years, I grew up in the 80s. The internet really wasn't a thing, but I kind of did like everything technical. There wasn't anywhere near as much tech as there is nowadays that you guys are exposed to. That's a picture of me when I was very young. I've kind of copied Becky's slide with this. Picture of the amazing t-shirt. So I grew up, there wasn't a lot of tech, but not long after this photo taken, we got our first computer, which was stunning. An Amstrad CPC 464 with a green screen and a tape player. It was shocking by today's standards, but it was the first time I'd ever played with anything technical, and I loved it instantly. Me and my dad used to play our favourite game, Harrier Attack, all the time. Again, graphics shocking, but it was the first time I'd ever played with anything technical, and I was like, I love this, I want to do this more and more. So for the rest of my childhood, you know, every piece of tech that I could potentially get my hands on, I did, and I loved it. Going through school, computers were there. There was a class for computing, but it really wasn't that much of a big deal at school. You kind of said, this is a computer, this is kind of how you make a Word document, and that was kind of the scope of it. I didn't do a GCSE in it because there wasn't really one at the time. And when I left school in '95, the internet was still relatively new. There was only 23,000 websites. I found this stat is quite an interesting one. 23,000 websites, which sounds like quite a lot, but today there's over 1.5 billion, which is just staggering. In 20 years-ish, it's just absolutely exploded. So when I left school, there wasn't really the option for me to go into web development, or certainly not one that I realised there was. So I knew I wanted to do IT, so I went and did a couple of years of IT at college. That exposed me to a few different areas. Nothing really still piqued my interest, so I thought, okay, well, I'll go and find an IT job. So I did. I had a few different IT jobs over the years. For about 10 years, I kind of jumped a couple of years here, a couple of years there, trying to find something that really engaged me. But most of them bored me. After 6 months to a year, I'd learned most of what I needed to learn to do the job. And I thought, I can't imagine doing this for the next 20, 30 years of my life. I want to go to work and be challenged and enjoy it. And most of them generally were quite boring. So I thought, right, 10 years of hopping around, not really knowing what I wanted to do, I thought, right, I need to do something that I really love. So I started looking around at different areas that I got into. I'd by chance done some coding for a friend, and that was kind of something that I really did enjoy, and I thought, okay, I might be able to do this as a career. So I knew that I enjoyed it, but I had no idea how to take that enjoyment of doing something and actually turn it into a career, what career options were available to me to do web development. I started looking around, and the kind of sheer number of things that are available to me kind of scared me a bit, and I was like, I don't know what route to go down. There's so many skills that I need to learn. I need a bit of a plan. So the considerations that I kind of looked at, and which would be good for you guys, I think, just to bear in mind when you start looking if there's something you want to do. Salaries is always a massive important factor, both in starting, but also looking long term, looking senior jobs, look at the ceiling of careers that you might be looking at. So look at 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line. Look around and see that you've got room to grow within your career, but also that the salaries will match that, because you don't want to be stuck in a job that actually after 10 years, that's it, that's as far as it goes. You want to make sure that there's always a path from a salary point of view. Look on job sites for demand. There's so many different types of web development role out there. You want to go for something that doesn't pop up once a year because they're so bespoke and so niche. You want jobs that are available that you can apply for, and it also means that you can compare jobs for salaries, for different perks, location, and it means that you can play them off against each other. But on the flip side, you want to look at saturation as well. You don't want to be going into a field where there are 300 people going for the same job as you. You want to be specialised enough that you really stand out, but not too specialised that there's not enough jobs out there. So kind of finding a balance between the type of role you want that is specialised enough, but not that everyone can do. And then the community, so the development community, when I say that, is basically other developers that do the same sort of thing. And there is a massive development community for every area of development, whether it be PHP or JavaScript. And it's really good to look at them and find out how active the community is, because they will be people that can help you. But also, if it's an established community, things like JavaScript that have been around for decades, there's enough documentation out there and people that will be able to help you. Newer things that have come into the market more recently will have a smaller community and less documentation, so it's worth bearing in mind, because if you're starting to get into it, it might be something that you struggle to pick up as quickly. So the labyrinth. So once you've kind of worked out the role that you want to go down, you've worked out, okay, this job has a future, it's got enough jobs out there and the community's really good, you start to look at, right, what kind of skills do I need to get into that role? And this is, again, something I looked at first of all, and I was like, I don't even know where to start, because there's just so many roles. Depending on which path you go, if you can kind of, I said labyrinth, but if you can imagine it like a tree. So basically you've got a branch, and off each of those branches, you can go different directions. You can basically follow it down a rabbit hole in terms of how deep you go with that skill. And you can essentially become a master of none, or a master of one rather. So you really specialise in a specific area, or you can take a level where you go, okay, I'm going to go this far down a branch, and then look at other branches. So you become a kind of a jack of all trades. Which path you go down is really up to you. Development can kind of be broken down essentially into front end and back end roles. This is becoming more and more blurred now, but traditionally you've got a front end and a back end. Depending on which one you go down will kind of depend on your interests, but also your skill set. From a front end point of view, front end generally is the part of the website that users see, the bits that they interact with on a day-to-day basis, how it looks. So although a designer will actually make the website and make it look amazing, it's the front-end developer that takes that image, cuts it up, puts it into HTML, and then really brings it to life with JavaScript and other CSS modes. Front-end's really good for people that are creative, that can see a flat image and really bring it to life and really use that to engage people with. In terms of skill sets for a front-end developer, you're looking at HTML. So HTML is the structure, the semantic markup of the website, the page that the browser reads, and then CSS is the styles that are applied to that to make it look how it looks. And understanding Photoshop, because obviously you'll be going to be given an image from the designer that you will then need to use Photoshop to basically break it out and turn it into a HTML page. And then JavaScript as well. So JavaScript is such an important part of websites nowadays. It's what makes it engaging, it's what brings it to life. An example of your route into front end might consist of something that's basic. So basically the main three from a front end point of view: HTML, so the structure of the page; CSS, so the styles that make it look a certain way; and then JavaScript that really bring it to life. Once you've got a basic understanding of all these, you can kind of go into a deeper dive. From a CSS point of view, you've got frameworks. So these, what I'm going to cover next, are basically tools that make you develop faster, that mean that you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. So the frameworks, Bootstrap and Foundation, these were kind of brought around a few years ago to make responsive development easier. So these are the things where you've got you build a website, it works fine on a desktop, but then it scales down to mobiles and tablets as well. So you haven't got to write different queries for different devices, it just automatically scales down for you. So these tools really make that a lot easier. Preprocessors, so these allow you to write CSS, so the styles for the website, a lot cleaner, a lot quicker. Traditionally, browsers, Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, all had slightly different ways of interpreting the styles on the website, so you'd have to write a different rule for every single one, and it made it laborious. These make it a little bit easier in terms of how you can write the code. From a JavaScript point of view, you have task runners and module builders. So these basically run in tandem with the preprocessors, and they basically can package up those pieces of code into stuff that the browser will understand. In addition, you have libraries. So Jquery came around a few years ago, quite a few years ago now, and really revolutionized how JavaScript work. JavaScript isn't the easiest language to pick up, and a lot of the work to do basic things took a lot of lines of code. Jquery simplified that a lot and made it a lot easier and a lot more accessible. Vue, the one above it, is something that's come along, kind of is a newer edition or a newer version of Jquery that allows you to, again, build really interactive, really usable sites. React at the top left is something that Facebook have developed, and Angular next to it. There again, they're JavaScript libraries, so they're based on JavaScript, but they're really kind of pushing new technology and really allowing you to do more things than we've ever been able to do before. So this is the kind of general skill set from a front-end point of view. From a back-end point of view, so back-end is basically all the code that sits behind the scenes, the code that you can't actually see. It deals with authentication, logic, so basically if you're a certain user, show this. If you're a different user, show this. It deals with interaction with databases. If you're using Amazon and you order something, you'll be logged in as a user. That logic in the back end will know who you are. It will assign that user order to your cart. It will store it in the database. It's basically everything behind the scenes. It's really good for people that have a sort of maths background or a science background, that have logical brains, because you really need to kind of pick apart the whole kind of hierarchy and structure of the program and kind of see how things work together. In terms of required skills, so main programming language, there's a number of big programming languages for web development. So an understanding of one of those, how databases work and how web programs interact with databases, and then also how servers work, because obviously everything runs on a server. So, and it's a developer's job generally. You might have an infrastructure engineer, but you might also just, in a lot of cases, in smaller teams, you'll have the developer who will deploy stuff to the server themselves and manage it on there. In terms of skill sets, so the first thing you'll need to learn is a language. So there's a number of different web languages. Again, it could be a case where you actually learn a little bit of each of these. Generally, people will kind of specify in one. They all do essentially the same thing, but there will be different routes for different ones. So once you've got to the point where you've understood one of these languages, you'll probably look to do a framework in the same way as a front-end framework will work. This basically just gives you the tools to develop faster. It gives you a lot of code out of the box that you don't have to keep rewriting. It also normalizes things, so you could work on a package for PHP in Symfony, for example, hand it over to another developer, and they'll know the structure because it follows a set pattern. Package managers, so these are basically things, so each one of these will apply to a programming language. So Composer runs with PHP, Pip with Python, and these are basically gives you the ability to pull in pieces of pre-written code by other developers. So if you need an authentication package for logging in users, you don't have to write it from scratch. You can go on, find someone that else has written it, and then just pull in their work and then modify it to work with your. So again, all these things are designed to make you work faster, but you still obviously need to learn how to use them. From a database point of view, you've got relational databases. So traditionally, MySQL is one of the most popular ones. A relational database has quite a rigid structure in terms of you've got like a users table and an orders table. When you create an order, it'll assign a user to that order, and then everything's basically linked into each other. They're really good, but they're quite rigid. You can't easily alter them. NoSQL databases, on the other hand, are very kind of freeform. They're not constrained by the same structure as relational databases. They allow you to basically throw any kind of information at it, and it will just store it, and then you can query it. The downside being they haven't got that kind of linked structure, so it can have some downsides. Depending on what your project requires will mean that you use one or the other, but a good understanding of all of them is good to choose, so you know which one to use. In addition to those things, you've also got things like testing, so you want to write good tests to make sure that your code works and it doesn't fail. You also need to understand servers, so there's different types of operating systems. Within Linux, there's then different variations of Linux. And then you've got web servers, the actual code that runs the actual website. In addition to all of this, I didn't have enough room on the slides, but there is just an enormous amount of information out there. But it's important not to panic at this point, because although there is a huge amount of information out there, you don't need to learn it all, certainly not to start with. You need to basically work out a path. Work out, once you know what your job is, or what you want your job to be, you can then start planning a route into what the skills are you need to do your job. So what an example might be, from a language point of view, I need to learn PHP. When you're comfortable with PHP, you might go, okay, I'm going to start using Laravel. You understand how Laravel interacts with PHP, the benefits that it gives you. And then you might go, okay, well, let's use a composer to start pulling in some packages so I haven't got to rewrite the same code all the time. Once you've got that working, you might go, okay, I need it to plug into a database. MySQL does everything I need it to. From this point of view, you've got a completely working application. You've got all your PHP code that runs it, you've got the MySQL that stores all the information, and that's all you need to learn. But what route you choose to go down will differ depending on what job you have. But it's important to know, although there are a plethora of skills out there, you don't need to learn them all straight away. There are a number of resources out there to help you learn these pieces. So paid options. So I used a few of these. Lynda.com is really good. Udemy do, I think, like $9 courses, quite small chunks of code. From a free point of view, obviously YouTube's brilliant. I used Google a lot. I am self-taught, and I used a lot of these courses to find very specific pieces of information that I needed to learn. Being a developer. So I love being a developer. I don't do as much development as I used to, being head of technical now, but I still manage to keep my hand in, and I really do enjoy it. It is something different every day. We do everything from building new pieces of software, managing existing software. So we manage a number of client sites, obviously. Clients is, they're the people that pay us. So we manage their existing sites. We fix bugs on their current sites. We add new features to their sites all the time. So we have a good understanding. We do some WordPress sites. We do some bespoke stuff that we manage. There's a lot of problem solving. So again, this is where the logical side of it comes in understanding, why is this breaking? Let's try and logically think about how I can fix this. And then researching and testing new technologies. I'll cover this again in a minute, but it is a very fluid area. New things are coming out all the time. It's important to keep on top of those and spend time to make sure that we're up to date. You never want to be caught using an out-of-date package. There might be something out there that does what you're doing better or faster or in a new way. So it's also always important to look at those. Not that kind of Jquery. So to commit to learning, as I said, it is an industry that is always moving. The jobs that I had previously, I got bored with because I'd learned most of what I needed to do. I wanted something that wasn't going to get stale, that I can do. I may have mastered a certain aspect of it, but I know in 6 months' time there'll be something new to come along that I'll need to learn, and that always keeps it fresh for the next however long I do this. This will be something that's fresh. It's important to persist, because although some things you'll pick up, they'll be quite similar to things that you already know, and you'll be able to pick them up and use them and run with them straight away. Other things really will take a lot longer to pick up, and you'll just be like, do you know what, I just can't be bothered with this. It's important to keep with it and really stick with it, because it might be the next thing that you just think, actually, now I understand it, I'll use it everywhere. Get stuck in. So when I was doing courses and when I was doing tutorials and online learning, if I wasn't actually coding alongside it, I felt that it wasn't really sticking, because if you're coding and doing it and you go, oh, it didn't work, why is it not working? Because it works on there. And you go, oh, okay, it might be because you put something in lowercase, or you didn't assign something, or you forgot a bracket or something. But actually doing it alongside, you'll learn, because it will just stick so much better. Keep looking ahead. As I said, it's ever evolving. You always need to keep your eye on the next best thing. And some things may, they may die very quickly, or some things might be, like Vue or Jquery, that they come along and you can't do without them. And you never want to be stuck in a career where someone else learns it before you do. So it's always worth keeping on the cutting edge, because then you can promote stuff within your business, or you can create something and sell yourself. It's the future. It really is. Everything we do is on the internet now. Like from online banking, social media, it's more so than ever before. That stat at the beginning, 1.5 billion websites now. Everything we do from social media, banking, everything is on the internet, and we need developers to build the sites that host that. So what next? So I know we talked obviously in there already about university and other options. I won't go too much into detail, but essentially from a development point of view, university is absolutely an option. I know a lot of developers that have gone down that route. It's probably 50-50 in terms of people that I've worked with that have gone to uni versus people that are self-taught. it really depends. It's not a, it's up to you in which case you go down that route. University may open some doors that would be otherwise shut if you didn't have a degree, but equally with self-taught you can really specify the exact, if you know where you want to go, you can just learn the pieces of information that you really want to learn. It's something you can do alongside another job. So if you don't really know if development's for you, you can find another job, do that, and do this in your spare time, and actually go, yeah, do you know what, I could do this as a job. And that's about it.